Okay, hello everybody. My name is Jay Oza. Let me welcome you to Speech Talk Live. This is episode number 2. And the purpose of this Speech Talk Live is for us to discuss public speaking, some of the problems and issues that many of us are experiencing. This is your opportunity for us to get together and talk about it and how we can overcome some of the problems that we might be experiencing. And then also, it also gives us an opportunity to evaluate a speech given by one of our members. And the third segment we typically do use is to evaluate a public speech that has been recently given and see what that speaker did well and what we can learn from that public speech. So at this point, I am a mentor for the Introduction to Public Speaking course at Coursera, the on-demand platform. And also, I work as a small, I have my small business called Tool Group, and I help startups driving sales. And lastly, I consider myself a student because I am also learning. Public speaking is hard, and I think that I'm constantly in that learning mode till I guess the day I die. So at this point, let me go and go around and have others introduce themselves. So Latish, you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Jay. Hi, Soumyan. Yes, so I'm Latesh Balakrishnan, and I'm based out from Kochi. This is in the state of Kerala in India, and I have got more than 10 years experience working in the IT industry, that's the information technology field. And I've been giving programs, trainings, etc. for my team, but I want to gradually, change it to an international audience. So the purpose of joining this particular sessions and activities is to get a broader idea about how to interact, how to introduce concepts which are relatively new, and get a buy-in from the audience, like how the way I'm expressing myself, the communication, the flow, the thought process, etc. That's something that I need to I improvise and learn. So yeah, that's the purpose of joining this particular activity here. And thanks, Jay, you're doing a great job. And I guess this is the first time actually I'm getting into this particular event. So I hope that there will be more participants joining us, for this. So it will be like much value adding as well.
Thanks, Latish. See, just by watching, I just forgot one thing. I didn't tell them where I'm from. So I'm from Hazlet, New Jersey. That's about 40 miles from New York City. So you see, sometimes just watching each other, we can learn something. The one thing I'd like to say is that we like to keep this small because when you have too many people, the format just doesn't allow it to work well. So I think at most we could probably handle 2 to 3 more people, but then once it gets too many, the format just doesn't work well. So I just wanted to let people know that this is a very selective thing because the Google Hangout, we've tried it when we have too many people going back and forth. The format just doesn't allow itself to have more than 4 to 5 people. We'll see if there are people with good broadband access. Maybe we can do it. Soumyan, you want to introduce yourself? Soumyan, you're next. Unmute your phone. Unmute your mic. He might be having some audio difficulty. Soumyan, you're still muted. Okay, I think he's having. This is one of the reasons why. Soumyan, you have to unmute your phone. Unmute your mic. Okay. Eventually, normally, I think he might not be able to get the audio. because he's usually he's from Bangalore. Sometimes he has a difficulty with the connection. So, I mean, can you hear us? Can you like unmute your phone so that we can unmute your mic? He's talking, but we're not able to hear him.
Yeah, he is talking, but yeah, I think he's not aware that his mic is on mute.
Yeah, but he should be
I
able
did
to.
the chat. I think it's in the group chat.
Yeah, right. But he should be able to hear us. I don't know. It looks like his audio is not working either. All right, so Latish, you and I just will talk while he figures this out. So, so these are some of the things you're learning when you do this format. You know, as Somin, you're gonna have to. We still can't hear you. You're still muted. Okay, so eventually he will figure out how to unmute his mic, and then we can get started. Since he was going to start the first segment of this talk. Okay. So, Latish, while he's figuring it out, so have you gone through this Intro to Public Speaking, the on-demand, the course that's on the Coursera platform?
I had joined Jay about a year back. I had gone through the course. I couldn't complete the entire program, but I did complete some modules. The early 3-4 modules, I could go through it and complete them, but I just couldn't finish the course, and that's something that I want to do it. Maybe going ahead after a few weeks, probably I'll do that.
Right. Actually, it's a very you know, the course is easy in one sense because the videos are easy to view and you can view them, right? This particular the G Plus community that I've been the lead mentor for, it started out with close to 400. I think there are 400 members, right? As of now, I don't think anybody has finished this course. So it just goes to show that this course, and these are 400 people who really wanted to work on improving their public speaking skills. And what happens is that once you start recording these speeches, it's a lot of work. They really get overwhelmed. And that's why we created this forum, so to get people to start talking about it and kind of motivate them to go and eventually record their impromptu speech, the informative speech, and the persuasive speech. So yeah, I do highly recommend that when you get a chance to just go through and finish the course, because then you'll find this forum even more useful, because there are a lot of basic stuff that you do need to go through. Soumyan, okay, Soumyan, you finally figured it out. Okay.
What happened was somehow suddenly there was another parallel channel that was coming through, because I had turned the YouTube channel on, so that was coming with a delay. So I went to turn it off. When I went to turn it off, the whole thing went off, and I was not able to get back in. I was able to hear all of both of you talking, but then I was not. Whatever I was saying was not getting back to you. No, my voice was not reaching you.
Okay, that's okay. So, Soumyan, just introduce yourself, and then we'll take a brief pause, and I'll introduce the next segment. Okay?
Let me start introducing myself also again. Well, my name is Soumyan. I'm based in Bangalore. I'm a retired corporate executive. I worked in the IT industry, and I retired from Honeywell Technology Solutions, Bangalore, in 2008. Ever since, I've been doing various kinds of consultancy assignments. I'm a freelance consultant right now. I've done a lot of courses in Coursera, and one of my favorite topics was process mining, which I completed about a month back. And now currently I'm very actively pursuing the task of promoting a society for promotion of process mining in India. Okay, so based on some of the participants in the course, I have been trying to build that, and we are trying to build a community around that and create a society. So that's the preoccupation I have got, other than being a mentor in this Coursera public speaking course and so on and so forth. So that's my background.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to take a brief pause, and then I'll come in and introduce the next segment, okay?
Okay.
Okay, again, this is Jay Oza, and this is Speech Talk Live, episode number 2. In the next segment, we're going to focus on a problem that a lot of students run into when it comes to public speaking. How do you get started? They get overwhelmed very quickly when they start working on their speech, and eventually they give up. So for this segment, I've asked Somyan to lead the segment, and he's going to talk about how he does it. And then we can kind of give our input on what are some of the tips and techniques we use. And again, until you get started, you can't finish it. So Somyan, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can tell us how do you do it.
Thank you, Jay. Fine. My primary objective is to narrate the way I went about creating my impromptu speech. Professor McGarity had already given something like 32 topics, stock subjects to talk about. I had picked up one of them. The topic says, computers are the most important technological innovations of the 20th century. So I am required to speak either for or against it and provide substantiated with my points of view. On the face of it, I took a hypothetical, I formed a hypothesis, yes, I want to agree with this, and that's what my speech will be about. But notwithstanding that, since this is a speech related to logic, in an impromptu speech, we are focused on logic, and the logic has to come out. So that's the primary objective. So I went about collecting some kind of evidence and things like that also. So now what I'm going to narrate is how I went about doing that. The reason I picked up this subject again is because I worked in the computer industry, and I spent nearly 50% of my, of the 20th century, perhaps I have lived through. And then, I also have worked both with computers and without computers. When I joined my first job in 1969, we didn't have even a calculator, pocket calculator, We had to use, in ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, we are using hand-cranked mechanical calculators, and that's the way we were working. It's only in the post-PC era that the computing power has come to the individual, but earlier it was not there. I could access a mainframe computer if necessary, but for a day-to-day simple operation, there was no computing resource available. Hence, I felt that I lived through that, and I'm able to relate to that subject, and hence I'll be able to explain my point of view better. So that's why I chose that. Now let me plunge into the topic itself. Now, this is a statement. It is not a question. Normally all speech will be a response to a question, but normally we structure it as a hypothesis and say whether you agree with the hypothesis or you don't agree with the hypothesis. So that kind of a thing. It's never posed as a question. We could always have said, which is the most important technological invention of the 20th century, but we say computers are the most important technological innovation of the 20th century, and now speak for or against. So that's the way the speech topics are created. Okay, now I want to investigate this. Now this statement is something I first, one of my early activities is to take the sentence itself and analyze it a little. I try to get into a little bit of semantics of that. I also try to look at the context-based constraints. Context gives us the boundary conditions, some of the limitations, etc. So I look at the context, and I also try to understand each and every word and how they relate. Now, otherwise, I may be building a speech with some misunderstanding and building a building in the next plot, my neighbor's plot. I don't want to do that. I want to clearly understand what is my own topic and focus on it. So that's why I want to do the semantic analysis. Now, looking at the context, I said context analysis is another thing I do. Looking at the context, all speech-related, statements we have are all valid for a certain context. Most of them will not be universally applicable in all situations. They'll all have some kind of a validity of a certain context. So I need to understand the context to which we have to restrain ourselves. For example, the current topic, which is the most important innovation of the 20th century. If you don't have that context, the time-related context, 20th century, if you open it out for all times to come, I may be wondering whether the wheel, which was invented in 3500 BC, is the most important invention in the whole of lifetime of mankind. And maybe you can even say the printing press of Gutenberg, which was actually invented in 1500 AD. Well, that is the most important invention. But then we are given a statement saying it is related to 20th century. So those kind of constraints, context are important. We need to define it within that scope. So that gives us a scope. Now, the next thing is, this is a declarative statement. A is adjective B. That's the way in context C. That's the way the whole statement is. In context C, I have already addressed. A is adjective B. This is the point. So B is a set of all inventions. A is computer, which is one of the inventions. Now A is part of B, and it has got a qualifying adjective which says most important. So now I am trying to look at these kind of things as semantic analysis. So what I have to do is, I have to say A and non-A. The non-A is another set. So I have to say the non-A is one set, A is one set, and the characteristic on which I am comparing these two sets is importance. So when I am trying to say importance, I again get into a little bit semantics of the word importance itself. What is importance? When I look at that, importance is the characteristic of possessing some great value, significant value, or leading to the consequences of significant value. So this is the way importance is defined. So I should say the thing I have chosen, the technology I have chosen to support is by itself giving significant value, or I should say this has led to a lot of consequences, other inventions, etc., which were enabled by this, or which followed this, and all the values generated by this also were actually enabled by this invention. So that's the way I am trying to build up the value proposition. So if I can say this is the way the value was, and I am able to compare this and say this added greatest value, then I have highlighted the importance of it. So that's the way the semantics part of it tells me I should be able to conclude. So this is one kind of outlook. Next, I need to see, after I have done this, I have A, I have non-A. I need to know what these non-A are. That is what the non-computer oriented inventions are. What I did was I went to the Google and Google to find out what are the most important inventions of the 20th century. There are some top 3 search items I took, and they talked of one website talked of 10 important inventions, another talked of 20, another talked of 30. I went through all of them. So when I looked at all these 3, it was obvious that they were all having a lot of overlap, and the most important things were all very clear and obvious. I picked up about the 10 of those top items and then started comparing them individually. When I did that, what I found was practically every one of them, either in its initial stage itself it was built on a computer, or if it was somewhat independent, its later avatars, or the modern versions of them, they've all been significantly enhanced by a computer or built on a computer. So this is what I found. Okay. So for example, you take nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is one of the greatest inventions of the previous century. But then the development of nuclear energy, the simulation and things like that went into saying how we can harness that, definitely involved computer-based simulation. Similarly, if you look at a power plant, modern nuclear power plant, its a control and things like that, they're built on automation control systems which are based on computers. You take aircrafts. Maybe the aircraft built by Wright brothers in the very early days, that can be called as something which was independent from computers. But then the modern aircrafts, we cannot look at a modern aircraft. We cannot think of it without computers. If you take the computational fluid dynamics that goes into analysis, that goes into streamlining the body of it, that is involving computers. If you look at the CAD programs with each the parts are designed, so they will have the minimum weight for maximum strength. That is based on computers. And if you look at the avionics and other control systems which let the aircraft fly by wire or safely operate, that is also based on computers. So like this, if you look at it, many of these facets are either based on a computer or were extensions which were enabled by the use of a computer. So with this kind of a definition, I concluded that all the value generated by these other inventions were also actually going and adding to the value provided by the basic computer itself, and hence the computer is the more valuable invention of all the inventions that we are talking of. Now, I also needed to go back and state what is the basic intrinsic value that a computer gives. Okay, computers are arithmetic and logic processing unit, and as such, it can do a lot of computations, millions of computations in a jiffy without error. Whereas humans typically have a great amount of problem. We are all fatigue prone. We make mistakes. We have to repeatedly do the computation to be confident, and then we are very slow. So I can illustrate this. In my days, I was telling you that in my early days, I used to do some hand cranking with adding machines to do computation. So in those days, I did make a spreadsheet, pencil and paper spreadsheet. I had to do this hand cranking with the calculator and find out numbers, compute them. If I add them, I have to add 2-3 times to make sure that I have not made an error. So I had to build a spreadsheet by manual means and use very, very primitive tools in order to do the computation, and it took a long time. And if somebody wanted to come and make a change in the spreadsheet, saying that why don't you change some value in the top line, we would resist and we will sort of discourage them from making any changes. Okay, so that's the way we were able to operate with the computers, with a spreadsheet in the early days. Compared to that, at a later stage, before my retirement, in one of the organizations I worked for, I had helped them to build a finance model. In this finance model, multiple spreadsheets were created, thousands of fields were filled, that they were all filled with formulae. So people could actually change one number. A sales person can change, sales price, or he can change the sales quantity. A manufacturing person can talk of productivity, or he can change, new employees introduction and related productivity difference. So all these kind of things could be done, and they were all able to simulate and see the results. Now I was able to go and encourage them, please go play with it. And they were able to come and make all the changes that they were capable of, and they were feeling confident because they could play out all the what-if scenarios and feel more confident. So this is the way they were able to, build their confidence and give a more robust model. So this is the kind of productivity difference. The productivity difference actually goes as a multiplier to the value that humans are able to generate. So now, with all this kind of analysis, I was now confident. I was now able to say, look, yes, I agree with this statement. Computers are the most important technological innovation of the 20th century. It is because, number one, it is able to increase human productivity. And number two, if I compare all other technological innovations of the same period, I am able to find that computers have either been the basis for the other inventions, or they have been contributing to influencing significant technological improvements in those innovations, in those inventions. So because they were either the base or they have influenced their improvement, they have added much more value than any other invention. So this is the kind of a conclusion I was able to draw. So in all this logic, I was able to use precise meaning and things like that, because I had gone ahead and analyzed each and every word. The analysis of the word important was one of my key factors. That's the one which enabled me to build the argument in a particular way. So semantic analysis, situation or context analysis, and and things like that are important. I also used Venn diagrams to visualize this for my own internal clarity. You look at computers as one element and all other things as another element, and form this as sets, etc. And in fact, Venn diagram is a kind of a semantic analysis when you come to logic. Logic is analyzed using Venn diagrams. So that's the way the whole thing is. There is also one other subject called in mathematical thinking, which is one of the courses I attended in Coursera. There is also this idea of symbolic mathematics, where you can express all English statements in mathematical expressions.
Right.
And using those mathematical expressions, one can even arrive at very robust logical conclusions. So that again emphasized for me that something like semantic analysis is a very important tool for building arguments. So this was my approach to building my initial speech.
Right. Okay. So that's good. Yeah. So I have a few questions. That So what you just described was your particular method of putting the speech together. But let's say if I'm an audience, okay, what you just expressed is very technical on how you went about it. What would be your main idea? Like, let's say if I'm crafting a speech and if I want to take it from top down, what is the main idea you want your audience to take away? And in like one sentence, what is the main idea of what you're trying to convey?
Yeah, in an impromptu speech, the main idea is always the logic, and we should not perhaps expect anything more than simple common sense on the part of the audience to accept our flow of our argument, etc. We should be able to present our argument and say, look, this is what I found, this is point A, this is point B, and these two things work together to establish my premise. Okay, my premise is computers are the most important invention. Why do I say that? Because computers add very high value, productivity, and second point is my statement is something which is comparative. I have to look at all other inventions and compare. I mean, when I compare them, I find that my choice is actually going and enabling all the other technologies as well, and hence the value generated by this technology is higher. So I am trying to establish that the value generated by computer as a technology is much higher than the value generated by any other technology. There are two dimensions to it. One is its own intrinsic contribution. Another is it is also able to appropriate the contribution made by all other derivative technologies or accelerated technologies. So that's the logic.
Right. So there is some, and Latish, you can step, because I think this applies to something you said earlier. So in your case, Soumyan, you're giving an impromptu speech which is pretty to a general audience, right? So what are you expecting your audience to know? Because that's very important, right? Because if your audience is not in the same wavelength as you are, then you're going to lose them right from the beginning. So what are you assuming that your audience knows? Because in some cases, I've given speeches, and the feedback I got is that audience didn't know anything. And I obviously with this Coursera platform, the audience could be just about anybody. But in your case, you have to make some kind of an assumption on how much your audience knows. So is your assumption that they either know how to use a computer, that you're assuming that they are using computer in their daily life? Is that the assumption you're making?
Absolutely. In fact, the 32 topics which Professor Magarity had chosen were all chosen to give some kind of commonality on people who come to attend this public speaking course. Most of the topics he had chosen were related to speaking in a general sense, or I mean communication in a general sense, or they were related to MOOC as a specific topic, or they were related to computers as another topic. Because he felt that okay, those who come to attend this course are likely to be familiar with computers. Those who come to attend this course are going to be interested in communication, or those who are coming into this MOOC know about MOOC as a concept. So these were the three themes under which all these 30 topics he had listed. So in fact, this becomes one of the difficulties. We need to normally know our audience and their interest and their ability to understand. In fact, somebody in the discussion forum also talked about the audience being kind of impromptu. In the sense, the impromptu really means that without preparation. Okay, so if you say that the audience is also unprepared to take something which is technically a little heavy, we need to be able to communicate that to them. But then what I was narrating, it becomes a little more technical, because I'm trying to describe my logic of bringing that argument, main points of the argument. If I simply look at what I'm going to be communicating to the users, that is going to be perhaps only the result. Okay, so how did I decide this? How did I choose this line? How did I, structure my thought process? If I do semantic analysis, I'm never going to be talking about semantic analysis to the audience in reality. But I'm going to be sure that I'm using a precise word, and I'm going to not, make a mismatch between the words I have used and what they may be able to understand. I'll be very careful about that. But since this introduction to you was about how I went about building it, I went a little technical. Otherwise, whatever I am trying to describe will be just impossible for a general audience to understand. since our friend Latish also is a technical guy, I'm sure that he'll be able to understand it. But many of our fellow students in the Coursera platform are all coming from different professional lives. There are many people who are teachers, many people are journalists, or many people are in different walks of life. Okay, so it may not be easy for all of them to follow, but in this particular instance, to say how I thought about, I'm actually narrating the way I thought about. That's the way it is.
Right. So Latish, you're going to be working on your speech. Have you given any thought that the speech you're going to be giving, I think you said on June 12th, have you given thought as far as, you kind of mentioned that your audience is very technical. How much do you know about your audience? Have you given a lot of thought to that?
Yes, Jay. The audience is like very much on the leadership side, and it also involves the people who are like less than years experience as well. So it ranges from very experienced to almost less than 6 months kind of an experience as well. So looking at that, I need to scale myself initially to the start level, like giving the basics of the concepts, and then gradually build it to a level wherein like they are able to, everybody's able to appreciate like what's actually the process and how is it going to benefit any other program. So that way I'm planning. I already created a presentation. A deck has been created. It's all about probably, as you mentioned earlier, I'll try to capture myself a small clip about me introducing the concept for about say 15-20 minutes, and then I'll share with the group, and then whatever is the feedback, I'll incorporate and improvise. And yeah, I think that would really help me for the big on 12th.
Right.
Coming to
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I actually wanted to also talk about Soumyan's concept today. I mean, is it something that we do it during the flow, Jay, or is it? I'm new to this this particular act. So
yeah, no. What he described is his methodology. You gonna. That's why we're all part of the students. You have to develop your own methodology that's going to work for you. Everybody has different methodology. And like that, the reason why in public speaking is a little tricky, okay? You really have to focus on it doesn't matter how much you know, it's irrelevant. It's how much the audience ends up knowing after you give a speech is what matters. So you have to keep putting yourself into the audience's shoes, like what is your overall objective in giving this speech? At the end, the audience is probably going to judge you. I'm taking audience as a whole, whether they like the speech or they didn't like the speech. And second is, what is the main idea of your speech? If they cannot, after you give a speech, if somebody cannot tell you what the main idea of the speech was, then you did not do a good job in conveying that. So everything has to come down to that. What is the main idea? And everything that you use within the speech has to support that in some ways. And you may have to repeat it because the audience is going to remember, they're hearing it only for the one time. You've been working on it for quite a bit of time, so you know a lot more than they do. So the biggest mistake that people make is that they don't look at the audience as somebody who is most likely not going to remember everything that you have worked on. You may put in like a week of effort, okay? Audience is going to hear it only once, and it's your responsibility to make sure that they leave with the main takeaway that you have, and you may have to feed it to them incrementally so they get it. So you may have to use techniques like using a story about your personal experience at work, and these are different techniques that you can use to make sure that they understand what you're talking about. Because you'll find that most people will not get much out of any speech the reason we know some of the famous speeches is because we've heard them repeatedly. We keep hearing them over and over again, like Martin Luther King and others. But if you ever listen to a speech, you really are going to understand. The thing that you're going to take away is the story that they're telling. That's the part you're going to remember. That's what appeals to human beings, not the technical details that you're conveying. Soumyan, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the discussion forum also we had one such a discussion. One of the challenges we will have is when the audience is mixed, like Latish was now mentioning, there are very experienced people and there are also relative novices. So then it becomes a very challenging thing in the sense, if you try to fly low to reach out to the novices, the experienced people are perhaps going to find it boring because they know all those things. And if you try to fly to their altitude and try to talk about it, these guys are just not going to make any sense of it, and they may be lost out. So it's always a challenge to address a audience which has got a great mixture in terms of their comprehending capability, and I think that becomes one of the challenges. So if we otherwise know it, then we can build our expressions and our cliches and things like that, which can be understood by a certain level of people. So that way, the thing can be simplified or made a little more complex. So I think to understand the composition of the audience and what they can take is very important to structure our expressions.
Right. But the main thing, Latish, when you're working on it, keep it simple.
Sure. Yes.
Don't if you're saying something that's too difficult to understand. So, like, let's say you're talking to me, and your main idea, it was something about stage gating or something, I think you said.
Yes.
Even though the audience, don't assume that audience knows what you're talking about, okay? Because they don't. So even though it might sound that you're kind of dumbing it down, if I have to give one tip, whether to err on that, I would say yes, err on that. Even though it sounds like, because there may be some people that are, who could be very technical. Remember, in any given speech, it's sort of like some people are going to like it, some people are not going to like it, and others won't care, okay? So use your common sense idea, like, okay, if I'm communicating, are they able to understand what I'm saying? And just, if you think there's something that could be misunderstood, just shorten the sentences out, repeat it again, and make sure they get it. You may have to repeat certain things, because don't assume that the audience will get everything you're saying. So these are the kind of things that you will learn from, and we're all learning, okay? We're all learning from experience, because at the end, a speech has to hit its mark with the audience, and you can't hit that mark all the time. It's really hard. All you can do is do the best you can in including a story that they can remember, use different body gestures, show some enthusiasm, why this is so important. If you think something is important for them to know, then let them know why this is important. Don't just say it and then just move on to the next topic. And just say, look, this is a very important thing to know. Like, these are the 3 things you got to know. And at the end, it's always a good idea to, I don't know if you can do that. Just give them the takeaways, that these are the key takeaways from this speech. Or you can ask them, so, what are the key takeaways did you get from this speech? Or you can do that if you feel comfortable doing, if you think you have enough confidence to do that. Like, what are some of the key takeaways that you got from the speech? And the audience likes that a little bit, like, okay, I got this out of it, I got this out of it. But otherwise, you just tell them that these are the key takeaways. And the main thing is, the more relaxed you are in giving the speech, the audience will feel it. So that's why you need to make sure that you are well rehearsed, because if you look, you'll be nervous. That's okay. That's natural. But the main thing is that if you look like you're enjoying giving that talk, then they will enjoy it too.
That's great. That's
so like right now, you're smiling and having fun. That's how you should be giving the talk. And another thing I'll tell you is this, another tip, and this is helpful that you joined us today, because otherwise Soumyan and I would be just talking about stuff, because this gives us an opportunity to educate others who are watching it. You should be having fun like you're having fun talking to us. I don't know whether you are or not, but I'm assuming you are. Because the thing is that if you are in a conversational mode, you right now, you're in a conversational mode with us, right? You're talking to us and you're having fun, you're smiling. That's the way you should be giving a speech. If you become stiff and not enjoying it, then the audience will capture a lot from your body language than what you're saying. So be careful about the toughest part in public speaking is integrating your voice and your body language with what you're saying. And what they really get is more from what your body language is telling them. So be very careful on how you use your body. You don't
Sure.
want to like move around, show some nervousness by shifting weight left and right, or rocking back and forth, or moving your head this way or that way. That's why this 15 to 20-minute recording, record it like we don't know the subject, okay?
Sure.
The 15-minute that we asked you to record it like we don't know the subject, so it's your responsibility to explain it to us. Even though we're technical, but I want you to just take this opportunity to take this topic and explain it as best as you can for people who may not be that familiar, or even if we are familiar, it doesn't help to level set it with us.
Sure.
Right? So, you have any, yeah, go ahead. So, you have any comments before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, I think everything is fine. We can move on to the next topic.
Okay, so the next topic I wanted to cover with Wendy, but she's not joined us, is she had recorded this. Shlomi, did you get a chance to view her video? Oh, he has to. You're unmuted.
Sorry. I have viewed it earlier too, and once again today I viewed that. In fact, the first time I heard her speech, I also went to Wikipedia and read an article on her problem. She has a handicap, it's called spina bifida, and there are 3 levels of spina bifida, and she has got the most severe of the types. And it's something apparently which happened when she was before she was born. As a fetus, she had the problem. The spinal cord, the bones which fuse at the bottom, apparently somewhere that the joint doesn't form, and then sometimes the spinal cord can come out through that, bulge through that, and that could cause a severe amount of problem. Such people find a lot of difficulty in moving around. They need to use crutches or wheelchairs, and even then, they can have other kind of complications. And that she was narrating those kind of difficulties that are associated with that. She was giving a fairly good description of what this ailment is about, when does it form, and what are the kind of difficulties that it causes to the patient. Okay, so what I read in Wikipedia was more or less, I was telling with what she was saying, and from that, what I understand is she had the most severe form of the spina bifida.
All right, so I watched that video. I think she does an excellent job in that video. She really captures her handicap, as you mentioned it, spina bifida, which I did not know much about. So and she kind of gives you all aspect of it, right, from how somebody's born. It's a congenital thing you're born with. And then how she's explains all the different parts. It's an informative speech, and I think she does a fantastic job. I don't know whether that was for a class or this was something she had put out separately from the class. So that's one of the questions I wanted to ask her, because technically she's giving a speech, but it's edited. She edits the speech in a way that she tells you each of the points about spina bifida. Like spina bifida is something, like she starts out with this, with kind of like a little humor she injects into her speech, where she says, if you're familiar with this game called Name That Tune, where people name the tune based on the number of tunes that you hear. So I thought that was very effective in how she started her speech. And then what she does that was really interesting in this recording was, and again, since she's not here, so I have to basically make this assumption, is the way she uses silence in this recording. So she'll say a statement about spina bifida, and then the camera will pan to the window or something like that, right? A chair or something. And when I first watched it, I was like, wait a second, this is not really a speech. What is actually she's doing? But then it occurred to me is that it could have been done for an effect, that she wants you to think about it. So she'll say something about spina bifida, and then the camera will pan and there'll be a silence. Then again, camera will come back to her face, and then she'll make another statement, give you more information about spina bifida, and again the camera will pan to the window or something, and then again she keeps doing. So she uses this technique, which is fine when you are doing a recording. I'm not sure how you could do that if you're giving a speech in front of an audience. So that was one of the questions that I had for her, that this is very effective as a recording, but if you were giving it as a live speech, how would you have done it? So we don't get that. When you're evaluating it, you're kind of evaluating the video more than the speech. So that's one of my takeaway from that. The other thing is, she really does a fantastic job in explaining this particular handicap that many people suffered through. I think she does an excellent job in explaining it. The one thing that I wish she had done, and someone correct me if maybe I didn't capture this, I think it would have been more effective at the end after she had described all of this stuff on. Even though you can see her that she's basically has not overcome it, she's coping with it and all that, but to say, look, I have this, but my life goes on. I can do so many things that make me a very productive citizen. I think if she had added that part to it, then it would have, I think, would have made the speech even better. That here's my problem, but guess what? Hey, we all have problems, and look, I'm coping with it, and I'm actually doing a lot of stuff out there. I'm even recording this video, so I am very productive. You don't need to feel sorry for me. Hey, we all have our problems. I think that would have really, I was kind of hoping that that's how she ended it, but it doesn't end like that. So that's the only minor point I have, that there was a certain element in that speech that could have taken it to even a higher level than it is at this point.
Yeah, I also noticed that that pause that happens, but I thought that maybe she has it's a difficulty she has got. It's some kind of limitation she has got in terms of how much continuous speaking she could hold. But then I think she has also been participating in another event which Julie has been conducting. We have a Saturday evening event, Google Hangout, in a similar way, where we read out from a book. We take turns and read maybe 2-3 pages from a book called Search Inside Yourself. Okay, I think she participates in that as well. But in that event, I think she is able to fluently and continuously read out. Okay, so that's what I have seen. But in fact, I am perplexed with this pause, etc., that happens. This recording has been done many weeks earlier. I think I have seen it on YouTube itself, and it was done quite a long time ago. Maybe it was one of her initial trial recordings and things like that, and she has gained more control on ability to deliver a continuous talk ever since. So that's my thought. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was. I checked it. It was recorded on April 14, 2011, so it's more than 4 years ago, and she has already close to 721 views. So Letitia, if you get a chance, take a look at it. She does a very good job in recording this this video that we're talking about. In fact, she was supposed to be on. I don't know what happened, and she was going to discuss it and some of the choices she made, and that would have been helpful. Because she really appears very confident, okay, in the talk. She doesn't make you feel like it's not like a pity thing, like, hey, look, I'm in bad shape. She really explains it to you, and she's like, in fact, if you watch it, you feel like, my God, this lady, she's done an amazing thing. I can't relate to it. I mean, I have a back problem that I can relate to. So, but in her, when I watch it, I mean, my problem is nothing compared to what she has overcome, her handicap, and how she's able to manage it and lead a very productive life. So I think those are the kind of things that I was more interested in asking her about, and that's the kind of stuff that I think would have been useful if she had told a story about, like, hey, here's my life, here's what I do, and that's the only part I think was that was kind of missing in that.
She has a very good sense of humor also. She was able to add very subtle humor, in many places, and I was really able to appreciate that.
Right.
Her difficulty or whatever she is going through, I think it was great of her to be able to smile at life and say something humorous.
Oh, it was very uplifting. So, Wendy, if you get a chance to watch our review, you did a fantastic job. Keep doing more of these speeches. I'd like to see your recording of other topics and the way you bring your humor and your perspective of life. I think it's the kind of message that other people need to hear. So keep doing it, and we're all rooting for you. Okay, so we're going to move on to the third segment. And so in this third segment, we're going to review the speech that was recently given by Scott Cook. Scott Cook was the founder of a company called Intuit. I don't know if you guys know about this company in India. Intuit is a multi-billion-dollar firm. They make these they're known for their. My dad actually uses their software, TurboTax. In this country, we have to do tax every year, and they, I think, sell 50 million of these TurboTax software that people use to do their taxes, and then they have a business version of it that my dad uses to do other people's taxes. But they also have this accounting package called QuickBooks and other sort of products for small businesses. It's a very successful company. It's publicly traded. I think their market cap, I don't know their market cap, but it must be at least 30, 40, 50 billion dollars. I don't know. So he was a founder. And the speech was given to the Harvard Business School students. So it was a commencement speech. And so let's just take a look at the audience first. So the audience that he's talking to, he was a graduate of Harvard Business School in the 70s, I believe. So his audience is a very specific audience. These are MBA students, MBA graduates. So he's talking to the MBA graduates. And the thing, so you have to judge the speech on the audience that he's talking to. So the audience are the MBA graduates. And what he does in this speech I thought was very interesting. He talks about, like, remember, these are MBA from Harvard. That's considered very prestigious. So they are supposed to be, know it all. And what he comes and tells them is that don't assume that you don't know it all. That what I realized was that that there are he gives them three advice, right? He starts out with some humor in the beginning about his starting a company. He never got any VC money and how he grew the company. And then he talks about three advice he wants to give to these students. The first one he says is that dig for feedback, that you need to get feedback. Don't think you know it all. You don't. So he wants the students to constantly be trying to get the feedback and assess it and see whether it makes sense, but don't shut yourself out from getting feedback from others. He's just showing his vulnerability, like, hey, even though you might get to a level that I've achieved at some point, but here's what I've learned. And he even talks about how he actually failed as a CEO. He actually stepped out of that position because he realized that he just wasn't equipped to be in that position. I thought that was very interesting, that here's a guy who's achieved so much, he's telling them, hey, but at some point you got to raise your hand and saying, I'm just not the right person for this job. Then the second advice he gives is that just because you are a CEO, it is important to have a coach. And this is something I can relate to because I do work with a lot of startups, and one of the problems that I see with a lot of the startup CEOs is that they are very successful in starting a company, but then they think there's this, this concept called the halo effect, that just because they started a company and they get all kinds of recognition, that they know everything about other things too, and they don't. And they don't go out and get any kind of coaching. So one of the things he's telling these graduate students is, hey, you're an MBA. Okay, so you got an MBA from a very prestigious university, and you may at some point get to be an executive. But remember, you still need a coach. The coaches are very important, just like top-notch athletes, whether they're cricket players or golfers or tennis players. They all need coaches. Coaches are very important to your success. And then the last advice he gives to students is something he calls it savor surprises. And what he's saying is that a lot of times good ideas do not come from the CEOs, they come from customers. And sometimes those are the surprises that you have to be looking out for, because those are the ones that actually can turn your business into real success. So these are the three advice that he gives to these MBA students, which I thought, and I'm not even an MBA graduate, but when I was watching it, I saw this video a few times. And I said, there is so much in this video that he's giving these students. I hope they go and watch it a few times and other people watch it, because all this advice he gives is very useful, relevant, and actionable. So that's my overall feeling. And this is not a kind of speech where you see a lot of theatrics or anything. He's basically talking like somebody who comes to you and says, Somyan, can you give me some advice? You're successful, you're now retired. What kind of advice would you give me so that I don't run into some of the problems? And it was almost like he's kind of like mentoring them the way he kind of gives the speech. So that's the feeling I got. So Somyan, if you had a chance to view it, I would like to find out what you thought of it.
Exactly. Those 3 points that he mentioned were very practical, and they were from his personal experience. He was talking. All the 3 were things that he had benefited from. All the 3 were things which he did not embrace automatically, but then he was surprised later when he was brought to confront these situations, and he felt that this becomes so significant. Each one of them he has realized, by going through. In the first situation, when he was looking for feedback, he said he was just not in the habit of asking for feedback at all. He was in fact scared of seeking feedback. And the one occasion where apparently he did a PowerPoint presentation for 6 hours, okay, and and he thought he put his best foot forward, and he made a 6-hour presentation and things like that. And then in between, just to provide a break, apparently he invited another person from IDEO, the industrial design organization, to give a 40-minute presentation, okay, to break the monotony, etc., and then continued with this presentation. And after a month or so, he was so proud of having made that kind of a long 6-hour presentation, he went and asked for feedback. For the first time, I believe, he in fact was expecting positive feedback because he thought he did exceedingly well. Then he found that after 1 month, when he asked for people as to what is their takeaway and what do they remember, 80% of the material that was remembered was from the 40-minute speech, and his 6-hour speech had such a low impact. So that was the biggest shock for him. So he took it for granted that what he did was excellent and he is being appreciated. Whereas when he asked for the feedback, he realized if he had not asked for the feedback, he would have remained, blind to that aspect. So that's what he was trying to emphasize. In the case of the coach also, he said this coach was always there in the organization, and many middle-level executives were the ones to whom he was providing this kind of coaching. Then it seems at one point, I said, why don't you do the same kind of thing, whatever you do for the other people, why don't you do it for me as well? And apparently this coach came, and one of the earliest things he did was that he brought in a 360-degree evaluation of this guy, from different facets, peers and customers, suppliers, maybe employees, and all kind of people. So he took a 360-degree feedback, and with that, when he confronted him, when the coach came to meet him, he was shocked that there is so much he didn't know as to how others feel about him. And that is one of the important eye-openers for him, to say that, look, I seem to have so many weaknesses. And what is interesting is the response he gave to that was also interesting. After this, he has gone to each and every one of those people who are supposed to have given a feedback and said, look, these are the things I have heard from this coach. These are the areas in which I have realized I have got a weakness. These are the actions I am going to take to overcome my weakness. And I am now telling you that I am going to be doing this. And if I am slipping back on this, which I may, because I am also a weak human, so please, give me a feedback. So he has gone and talked to each and every one of the people who gave the feedback and asked them to encourage them to go and give further feedback without any hesitation. So that's the kind of atmosphere he has created. That was interesting. And the third dimension, again, I was quite surprised that, I also used to think that, in accounting software, etc., you always look for that double entry accounting. Everything has got a credit and debit and declared, and you balance it, all that. Okay, so I have tried to handle accounting for Wikimedia chapter also for about 1.5 years. Yeah, I know how maddening this kind of double accounting, etc. And if you don't have a good clarity as to how these things are to be posted, you can really go and mess up the whole thing and wonder how to balance this account book. But then what was interesting was apparently he learned from some small scale person as to how he is doing accounting. And that is how that quick notes or whatever it is was apparently developed. And he found that it was an unconventional way of accounting. Okay, but then that is how one small entrepreneur was handling his task. And then when he incorporated that, nobody copied him. But then at the end of it, silently, the product sale was hitting a kind of a very high. And then suddenly he became famous, and his product, that particular product, accounts for 50% of his turnover. That is amazing. Something which was unconventional. That is where he went on to say that savor the surprise. Okay, he heard from one customer a surprising thing. He is not following conventional accounting practice at all. He is trying to do accounting in his own way, and which was much simpler. As far as that guy as an entrepreneur is concerned, that is the simplest way. And when he incorporated that simplicity in a software package that he was trying to offer, the market lapped it up and it became a success. That is interesting. So I think it was a very nice talk. He spoke from personal experience, and he brought in just three points, but all the three were very, very nicely explained points. The only thing I felt was initially I was thinking that he was being a little monotonous and things like that. He was not doing much theatrics, etc. As you said, maybe he could have, added a little bit more of this one. But then he was very casual. He was never pompous and things like that. He behaved like I am one more student like you. So that's the way he talked, So we are all on the same page, kind of stuff. It was nice.
I agree. In the beginning, because sometimes what happens is that the content of the speech was very important, because the message that he was sending were real practical message that anybody could take away. Because a lot of these commencement speeches tend to be rah-rah speech. You're the future. You're the future of our, mankind and all that. And people don't really get much out of it. Where he was directly talking about his vast experience after, at one time, he got an MBA from Harvard too. That, hey, I'm giving you all of this knowledge that you probably didn't get in the school. This is the real world stuff now, okay? All that stuff you learn about finance and marketing and all that, that's all good. But let me tell you what you really should have learned. And I felt like I was getting an MBA education by just watching that speech that they gave. So Latish, I would watch that speech, because some of those ideas you might be able to incorporate when you're talking, because you said that a lot of the people that you're going to be talking to are in a leadership role. And you can actually inject that. Said, hey, I just watched Scott Cook give a speech at Harvard where he talks about giving feedback. And I hope after this speech I can get the same kind of feedback from you. So be vulnerable. Be vulnerable right in the beginning, saying, I was watching the speech by Scott Cook where he talks about how feedback is so important. And I hope that I can get some valuable feedback from some of you, experts or so-called. So that way you're kind of showing them that you're not just you know it all. You're also willing to improve.
Yeah, to be a founder and then go on to appoint one CEO, and then he goes on to appreciate the CEO also. Apparently the CEO made one speech somewhere, and then he came back to ask Scott, Scott, can you give me a feedback as to how I spoke? Apparently Scott said, everything looked nice and you made a very good speech. I have nothing to say as criticism. There is no great point I have to mention for improvement, and so on and so forth. So that's a kind of expression he gave to that CEO. But then the next day, the CEO apparently came back and said, look, I was going through a video recording of my own speech, and here are the A, B, C. These are the points in which I want to improve, and I feel that I could have done better in this. Well, he said, see, look, it was great. I mean, Scott agrees that, yes, those are the 3 points where he could have done better. But then here, look at this guy. He was able to analyze his own performance and then come with the pinpoint, this one of saying these are the areas where I could improve. That means his motivation to do self-improvement was so high that he was able to correctly assess his own speech, which not many people will find it difficult, So that's another interesting point that was there in the video. I think overall, I am surprised that I'm able to recall so many points from that video talk, even though I just watched it just once.
I think you can give that whole speech, Soumyan.
Huh?
I think you just gave the whole speech to us. I think Latish is saying that, hey, now I don't even have to watch it. He just gave me the entire speech. I mean, that is the entire speech. But
that's important. He made it memorable. That was his skill.
Right? So in a way, that speaks to how good the speech is. There's one thing you forgot that he mentioned, Soumya. Now that you got the entire speech, I'm going to pick on something you didn't get. And this is what he actually sits on a board of Procter & Gamble. You guys know Procter & Gamble. That's like one of the largest consumer packaged goods company. And the CEO of that company is someone by the name of A.G. Lafley. And what A.G. Lafley told him was that when you're a CEO, in order to be a successful CEO, you have to be a lifelong self-learner. Which Absolutely. I thought was a very good advice, that once you become a CEO, or any position, but especially if you're a CEO, you're constantly learning. That is your number one skill. You've got to be able to learn. And again, that's something that he picked up from he quotes A.G. Lafley there. So I think there is a lot in there, that speech that, Latish, I strongly urge you to watch that. And for anybody who's watching this, please, I'll provide the link to both the Wendy speech and also to Scott Cook's speech. And the Scott Cook speech was a publicly given speech, and let's just face it, he's not a newbie. He's been giving speeches. He's a CEO. But even then, there's a lot of things that you can take away. Just because he has more experience than us in giving speeches doesn't mean that there are a lot of things that we can't use in our own speeches. So that's why I wanted to include that and review it and see what are the things. And I think the key things I learned is how personable he was, giving his personal stories to teach a business lesson, and that's what I got out of that speech.
Absolutely.
Okay, so at this point we're going to move to the closing thoughts and then close it out. Okay, so at this point I'm just going to say thank you, Latish and Soumyan, for joining us, and Soumyan especially, thanks a lot for leading the session on how to get started in giving a speech. I thought that was very useful, and I think people watching this will be able to take away quite a bit. Like I said, we want to create this like an informal, like a workshop where we both interact. Some things will agree, some things will not, but at the end, this feedback that Scott Cook talks about is what this program is about, is to give each other feedback and to get better.
Yeah, if people watch it on the Google Plus forum and then record their comments below the video, it will be great for us. It's always going to be limited in terms of how many people can be participating live, because different people are in different geographic locations and different time zones and things like that. The timing may not be convenient for many people, even though they may wanted to join, etc. But anyway, I mean, please post your comment, and then you try and join in the next week. We will continue on the same line.
Okay, Latish, closing thoughts?
Oh, sorry. Actually, I was not really prepared when I just opened the link. So more or less, it was more like I was intruding suddenly into the room. But I think I was very fortunate that I could do that, and absolutely it was the 1 hour that I spent with Jay and Soumyan, and the lot of inputs that I have got from the conversation that we had the past 1 hour. I'll definitely incorporate in my speech, I mean the way I'm going to prepare this 20 minutes of recording, as well as for the next week's program. Definitely I'll try as much as possible to incorporate those inputs. So thanks a lot to both of you, and I look forward to, again, look forward to the future sessions also, wherein I'll be joining all of you here.
Right. So Latish, let me next, like if you can record this speech and get it to us by, let's say, early next week, then you're welcome to come next week, and we can even give you an evaluation, a live evaluation. So if you have time,
Sure.
I would just do it. This kind of motivates you to do it, because I'll tell you one thing: if you record your speech and send it to us, you will do a good job when you have to give it live, because most people don't do that.
It looks like his speech is going to be on 12th, which is a Friday, and the next Friday. We are going to have our the third session of this speech talk live on the next Wednesday, that is on 12th, same time, 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. Indian time. Okay, so maybe by that time, you would have finished your talk in the afternoon or something like that, probably on
Yes.
next Friday.
Yeah, right. So
Okay.
we'll give you feedback by email, and then after you have given the speech, you can kind of then tell us how it went.
Yeah.
And is anybody going to be recording your speech?
Sure.
Somebody's going to be recording your speech live, the one that you're going to give live?
Oh no,
Well,
oh no, that's
that might be proprietary, right?
So that may be confidential.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, forget about that. Just tell us how it went, okay then?
Okay.
Sure, sure.
All right then. Thanks again, and we'll close it out.
Bye, Latesh.
Okay.
Bye.
Good luck.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Jay and Soumyan. Bye.
Okay. And join us
Bye.
again. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.